Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through three different visions of this coming election. One that is saying, nobody really cares. The other one talking about specific messages that either candidate is actually winning on and can keep pushing in order to do better. But of course, when we end today's episode, we're going to end on a positive note. We're going to end with our daily delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. But that's enough rambling from me. Let's jump into our game segment, Dip, Dive, and Dodge. Roll the intro here. All right, I think I've given enough time for the intro. So, how this works is when you're a politician, you get thrown questions left, right, and center. And sometimes you don't want to talk about what that person's asking. You want to dip, dive, and dodge away, and you want to pivot to something that you have written down or that you were briefed on before you got out there. Today, I am going to be a Democratic mayor from the city of Detroit, and I'm going to be both the reporter asking the question and the mayor. You'll kind of see how it works, so let's just get into it. I'll be the reporter first. Mayor Smith, as your tenure in the office is coming to a close, there has been a recent push to have a mandated green roof initiative where everybody would be forced to have some sort of solar array or a garden of some sort in order to cut down on emissions and actually provide a green source of energy or food for the local community. You have not necessarily spoken out about this before. What are your opinions on the matter? Well, thank you for asking, our friend from the Detroit Star. I really care about our local community here in Detroit, and what I heard there from you was an attempt, or at least this new law that you're asking about, is an attempt to build up community and also self-reliance. And that's what I've been proposing for a long time with my community wealth building program. So the whole point of it is to reinvigorate the community-based ownership that was so present in our ancestral times so that everybody feels invested in some of these local goods and services. So we have low interest loans that would be given out through different locally owned businesses, and they would be collectively owned. So it's not just one by one person or another. These sort of initiatives will actually help the community grow and build wealth together. And at the end of the day, I talk a lot about this. There's actually a whole new series that we're going to be doing a campaigning event on. It's called Reimagining Our City, a Forum for Inclusive Growth. And if you want to come out to that, please go buy the tickets online. They are actually only $1, but we want to have as many people engaging in this as possible. Thank you. Okay. So you can see where it comes from there. It was a little bit weird, honestly. The second policy proposal was a little bit out there, but I had ChatGPT generate a few for me, and sometimes it comes up with some really odd ones, which are kind of hard to defend. But with all that said, now we can jump into our articles. Hope you enjoyed that segment. Our first article comes from National Review. I'm not convinced Americans care much about this election. And when I read that headline, I was obviously conflicted because as a person who regularly talks about politics on here and definitely is involved in politics, I sit back and say, is that true? And the question obviously may fly a bit above my head because I really am insulated in the people that I interact with. A lot of the people I interact with are in politics, or at least in the periphery of politics. They're very interested in the state of our nation when it comes to the politics that are going on, whether it be Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, the different policies, the foreign policy, all these sort of things. Everybody that I know at least has some sort of pet project that they're very specifically focused on, and they really want to make sure they're messaging well on when it comes to politics. So I obviously am not fully in touch with every single everyday American, but there has also been a good chunk of time. Then again, when I've been back here in Virginia, I haven't talked to people about politics as casually as I did when I was in Kentucky with some of the people that I would normally interact with on a weekday, who definitely were politically interested, but they were still a little bit more far and few between. Most people were tapped out. So I'm willing to acknowledge that the author actually may be pretty right here. It feels a little odd to say so, because there are the random people that I know on the street or that were just working at Walmart that would still talk politics with me when they wanted to. So I don't necessarily know. And I don't think there's that much of a vibe shift from 2023 to 2024. So maybe the author's onto something. Let's actually go into what he says and kind of deconstruct his argument a little bit. Quote, I do not mean by this that the United States faces no problems or that the public is not aware of the issues that obtain them. I merely mean that those problems do not seem to be dire enough for the average person to have escaped their usual habits or to have considered politics more than they usually would. So that's the first part of that paragraph. And I think when he's talking about this, he is getting to something that I can at least agree with. There are lots of people I know who they're not going out and suddenly going to rallies. They're not sitting there saying, oh yeah, now I'm going to donate a whole bunch of extra money. They may be sitting there complaining. They may be sitting there commenting, but it's not going to actually shape how they interact with the world. It's not going to change where they're putting their money. So I've plenty of friends who donate to like Catholic charities. They're not going to suddenly go, you know what? This money would be more well spent on XYZ candidate. They really embody Catholic values. None of them are doing that. So I think that is fair enough. And a lot of my casual friends, I don't see them going to Trump or Kamala Harris, even though she just started doing rallies. I haven't seen them say, hey, let's go to one of these rallies overall. I've honestly seen them more say, hey, let's go to a comedy club. They would rather spend their money going there than buying a ticket for one of these rallies. So I understand where the author is coming from. I think that the next case that he makes is actually the really important one. It's based not just on current evidence, but also based on historical evidence. And what do I mean by that? So he doesn't just say, oh, well, people don't look activated. He's saying in the past, we have seen examples where they have been extremely activated. And these range from 2008 to 1984. Actually, let me just read some of the quotes from the article, just so you have a better idea of what he's trying to talk about when he says a politically active moment. Quote, the thing is, when Americans are upset, you can tell. They engage, and things change as a result. This happened in 2008 after the financial crash, and again in 2010 after the unheeded backlash to Obamacare. It happened in 2020 during COVID. It happened in 1980 when inflation was rampant. It happened in 1974 after Watergate, and blah, 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 blah. Sorry, not to say blah, 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 to imply that his article is blah, 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 to imply more that he goes on like this, providing examples from 1932, from 1920, 1984, 1964. So he gives all the hits from Reagan to Goldwater, so on and so forth. But what I think that he may kind of be missing here, and it's not to say that he's wrong, because I think out of all the articles today, I think this is honestly the most truthful. And that's not to say that the other ones are lying. I think that this one hits on the most normie, middle of the road point of view out of all of them. And you'll see why once we get to those other articles. But what he's highlighting is, more importantly, that people are burned out. I think it has less to do with whether or not people actually see this as an important election, because trust me, young women of all ages, Democrat women definitely see this as an important election. Young men of all different races see this as an important election. And there are different segments of the population, whether they be the really hawkish foreign policy types, or the Dove foreign policy types that also see this election as very, very important. So when you go up into certain segments of the population, of course, things are going to resonate more because the election rotates around a certain segment of issues. If this election was all about the economic centralization of the economy, which it is, that is not the focus of this election. Donald Trump obviously wants to make the focus immigration. Kamala Harris wants to make the focus. I was going to say Donald Trump, but that's more of a Joe Biden issue, honestly. She wants to make the center of this election actually making the economy more affordable for people, or at least that's what she says she wants to do. Just like Trump says that he wants to immediately fix all the wars overseas. Once again, we don't know if he'll be able to do that, but you can see why this election would really encourage the foreign policy people to come out. And then also, Ms. Kamala Harris obviously talks about abortion quite a lot, so you can see why the abortion people would come out for this election. So each one has its own set of issues that are going to resonate very, very heavily. And like I said earlier, this is not the central economy election, but I don't think that would bring out a large swath of people. I think abortion is one of the most large appeal issues because of the fact that it has been repeated year after year after year after year. And what do I mean by large appeal? I'm not saying pro or anti. I am saying abortion generally is one of the most well-known, well-discussed, well-messaged, and by well-messaged, I mean well-defined. It has really defined messages. They already have their propaganda slings out there, pro-life, pro-choice, and they go on, and everybody knows what you mean when you say, unless maybe you're under 10 years old, maybe under 15, everybody knows what you say when you say pro-life or pro-choice. And that's why I think that the author is tapping onto something, which is people are really burned out, but I don't necessarily think that a majority of Americans are not caring whatsoever. And when I say a majority, maybe it's 50.2. Maybe it's just slightly a majority. But I think because that Donald Trump, the person that constructed the judiciary, the Supreme Court that got rid of Roe, and Kamala Harris, a woman who has been messaging on Roe, has also been a part of the Democratic presidency that it happened under, I think that this is a really potent issue that's going into this election, and I think a lot of people care about it. Now, they may not have the most strong beliefs on one side or the other, but they at least have an opinion, which means they're going to be at least semi-engaged in listening to what the candidates have to say. So that's my only really counter argument there, that it's not disagreeing that some people don't care. That's fair enough. Some people will not be engaged until a week before they go physically cast their ballot, or they won't even cast their ballot. That is all fair. We are notoriously not a high turnout election. I mean, compared to Australia, where it's mandatory to vote, I think there's somewhere around 95% last time I checked. That still feels a little high, so go fact check me on that one. Versus us, which is somewhere around, I believe our highest is 70%, if I'm not crazy, but I think that's our highest ever. I think it's more regularly somewhere around 60%. So actually, I'm coming to you with a little bit of a delay because I wanted to double check. So the highest turnout overall is around 66.6, which is kind of odd. Don't love that number for the 2020, and we're talking presidential elections here. And then we kind of hover around 60%. 1996 is a low one at around 51.7%. So yes, we do have a little bit of a lower voter turnout, especially compared to some of those other nations that actually require a citizen to go out and vote in their elections. So what this is actually tapping into, what I'm trying to get at, is the fact that we'll only really know how much people really care after the fact. But I do think that the author raises an interesting point, which is, do you see the same memery that you saw in 2016? 2016 was a pretty average turnout. It's gotten a little bit higher throughout the 2000s, so it was kind of average for the 2000s. It was around 59.2%, but you saw a lot of memery online. You saw a lot of people getting activated, and once again, it could be that I was in a bubble, but at that point, I was less politically active, and I still saw it. So maybe we're going to be able to actually see the same thing during this election, because you see some of the memes for Kamala Harris. You see young people being very active, and young people are some of the most apathetic voters out there. Most young people just don't care. They don't know. And I'm not trying to hate on them and just be mean. It's really true. They are one of the lowest turnout demographics. And when you see young people going out there and posting on social media and being loud and proud about their political beliefs, it leads me to question when someone says that people do not care. Once again, I could very well be in a bubble, and if you're listening to this, maybe you're in a bubble, because I'll be honest, we talk mainly politics here, which means you're probably in the politics algorithm if YouTube is suggesting this to you. So that's enough on that view of the election. Let's jump into our next one, which comes from the New Republic. Headline reads, "We're in the last 100 days of the most important elections of our lifetime." Just kidding. That was actually the ad that they want to serve you at the very top. The headline of this article specifically, underneath that, is "The nice round number that will give Kamala Harris a winning message." So yes, I kind of trolled you there, but that's because I wanted to directly conflict the narrative, but also show how different people are treating this election. Everybody always says that's the most important election ever. I don't think that rhetoric will ever stop, but you can see that some people are full sail jumping into it, pushing into the narrative, trying to make sure that everybody believes it's the most important election ever, while the other side is saying, no, probably not. Probably not the most important election ever, but maybe we should at least watch what's going on. So what is the New Republic's argument going to be about Kamala Harris's message and how she can resonate with people beyond the issues and the policies that I had talked about previously when talking about the passion that is undergirding American elections? So what is she going for right now? Quote, "At a rally in Las Vegas on August 10th, Harris called for eliminating taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers and increasing the federal minimum wage. Her Republican opponent, Donald Trump, has already proposed the former, and economists don't think it is particularly wise policy anyway. Quote, "If we reasonably assume that the goal of this policy is to provide tax relief to the working class families, this is an ineffective way to do it." Ernie Tedeschi, a director of economics at Yale Budget Lab, told TNR, the New Republic's Grace Seegers. And raising the minimum wage, while a good idea, has been on the Democratic agenda for ages. So you're hearing this, and I think it's always interesting. The Republicans out there, they're really, really frustrated, or at least they love to bring up, oh, well, she doesn't have any policies of her own. She's just stealing Donald Trump's policy, because even the New Republic acknowledges here that the taxes on tips and wages, that was something that Donald Trump threw out there, and then guess what? She decided to copy it, and she can't even come up with her own policy proposals, which, fair enough criticism, attack from any angle you can. I get politics. I understand the practical game. But honestly, don't you see it as a benefit? If she's taking on that policy and you really believe in that policy, you're not just saying that, oh, we like it because it's politically advantageous, but you like it because it's actually sound policy and it's going to help people out, then why would you be angry if the other candidate comes in and says, you know what, I'm going to steal that because I actually think it's good policy as well? Probably because both sides are actually worried about it being politically effective and not necessarily caring about whether it's good or bad for the economy or good or bad for people. But, I'm just a little bit too politically cynical, maybe. But the point that the author is getting at here is that she actually has a more expansive tax change system that she wants to go through. So I want to skip over all the specific details. She talks about actually expanding, the author talks about expanding Social Security, giving more benefits to people, or at least leveling it back out to 50% of the average income of an American, which it's really fallen to like 36% over the last few years, and raising it back up. And this is obviously something that the Democrats feel like they can really message hard on, because Republicans for a long time, their message has been, hey, Social Security, Medicare, we need to reform it. We need to change it. We may need to make it solvent. We need to possibly cut benefits. We need to raise the age of retirement, blah, 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 blah. This has been their political messaging for a long time. And Kamala Harris is kind of pulling back to those days and saying, hey, guess what? We're actually, or at least the author's arguing that she should pull back to those days and say, no, we're actually going to expand Social Security benefits. We're not going to try to take it away from you. The irony is that Donald Trump is already out there saying, no, I don't actually want to take it away from you, even though the author, and let's be clear, this is actually not just Donald Trump saying it. It is in the RNC platform. It is not just Donald Trump saying, oh yeah, we're not going to touch it. I swear we're going to put it in a lockbox, and only I will have the key to the lockbox on top of the Speaker of the House. Nobody will touch it. Your Social Security is safe. It's not just Donald Trump bloviating up there on stage. The RNC put it into its platform, meaning that almost anybody running with RNC funds, at least tacitly, not 100%, just because you were running with the RNC doesn't mean you have to 100% agree with every single thing they're saying, but at least tacitly agrees, okay, hey, we're not going to touch Social Security and Medicare. So when the author says, no, they're still going to take your Medicare, they're still going to try to limit benefits, I don't want to say she's lying, she's just being disingenuous because she believes that's what they'll do, even though they clearly, okay, so if you want to take them at their word, we can take them at their word. And they've said outright, if you believe deep down in your heart that they're still going to do it, fair enough, but don't make it sound as though it is 100% fact. Say, this is what I believe they will do, not, oh, this is what they're going to do. Just like I say, it's in their platform. That doesn't mean that they'll 100% stick by it, but at least it is written down in the platform, and that is what they're telling their voters. Then again, politicians lie to voters all the time. But when you're trying to report on things, you need to at least show the other side and be genuine about the other side, not just bloviate, put your opinion in there, and not highlight the other part of it. So that's why I kind of stepped back and said I wasn't going to cover the details. I wanted to at least go back to that. But how she wants to fund it is even more interesting to me, and that's why I wanted to get to the ending here. Quote, how to fund it. Quote, let the high earners who back Trump pay. First, take back the 2017 Trump tax cuts and use every penny to fix the future deficit in the system. Extending the tax cuts would increase the deficit by about 1.2% of gross domestic product, which coincidentally is the size of Social Security's long-term shortfall. So that alone would shore up the program. But do you see what she does there? Extending the program would increase the deficit. So she's saying, instead of extending the program and getting those losses, we're just going to still use that same amount of money losses, the same, and just, cover Social Security. So no, we're still adding more money to the deficit. Really? Okay, so I understand if you don't care about the deficit, then you can make a nice little beautiful little frame up here, which is, well, if we're going to add to the deficit, we need to add in the right way, and we need to shore up Social Security. Fair enough. But when you pose the argument exactly as you do, it makes it sound like you're about to say, oh, okay, so it's actually going to earn us. No. It doesn't earn us that money back. It's just the exact same expenditure that we could use somewhere else. And it's just extremely frustrating. It's, spend more money. But there is even more to this than just that. Quote, then raise the payroll tax that funds Social Security. The current rate is 6.2% for both the employee and employer, and earnings above $168,800 aren't subject to tax. Raising it to a 8.5% tax would get us the 50% replacement income for middle earners and more for low earners. Okay, so let's pause. What are we doing with that? What happens with that? One, we are taking more money out of people's pockets today and promising that we will give it to them in the future. Because guess what? That money, it's not, oh, hey, you take it out of your paycheck. It's a forced saving mechanism, and it goes into a special account with your name on it. No, it goes into the overall fund. The money is shelled out now to the people that need it, and it's just a promise. It's just a promissory note. It's just like a fiat currency. Oh, well, hey, this will be worth something to you in the future. So not only are they worried about the short term now, they're worried about how to short term fund it, And what I mean by that is, how do we alleviate the system now so that it works for the people that are already in it? We take money from the people that are working now. It's a very short-term looking, how should I say, to make it really specific, it is the horizons over which they are looking are 5 years, not 30 years. That's probably the best way to put it. They are stripping people of the money now and giving it to somebody else who, I'm not saying that they didn't pay into the system. I'm not saying that they are not struggling, but you're just raising the taxes to strip people of their money now to pay off somebody, and it's not even a guarantee, because guess what? We'll still have to keep reforming Social Security and Medicare in order to make sure that it survives until that person who just had their money stripped from them in the modern America, until they're 67 years old, and even then, it's only a promise. It's not a guarantee that they get their money back. So you could see why this sort of solution is extremely, extremely frustrating. Why not, if you're really going to do it and you really care about people, why not have a forced, if you want to have government intervention, you're okay with the government getting involved, why not have a forced savings program where you take the exact percentage out that you're taking now, you put it into a high interest savings account, maybe because you're the government and you have the full backing of the faith of the American people, you can really go up to some of the big banks and say, hey, we really need a high interest rate account so that people can save, basically, and you can use this money to lend around while they are waiting for their retirement, which could be 40 some years. It could actually be extra capital for you, and you just do something like that rather than a giant fund of money that can get thrown around year to year that they constantly have to keep adjusting things for. No, just make it completely individualized, because the real idea here is not necessarily that, and I know there's way more to it than this, but the point should be we want people to have a good retirement. So we're going to just have a government-forced option. And I understand big government, but like I said, you're already willing to steal the money for Social Security. So why not just have a government-forced savings option? Why not? Why not do it? Okay, if people aren't going to save themselves because they just don't think about it, then you just have that tax roll out from their paychecks specifically, boom, boom, boom. And then that even alleviates some of the other issues where they want to remove the cap on how much people pay on the Social Security. Maybe a millionaire is saying, yeah, you know what? I want that to apply to all of my wages for this year. Instead of it just going to the first 168, I want it to go to all 500,000 so that I have a secure bank account in the end. But no, we're dealing with the broken system that we have because we needed something to be able to solve the solution exactly at the moment, which means we were betting on the future once again. Now that we're trying to reform things, we're just stuck in the loop that we're in. But hey, I went really far off the track there. But my point being, this is a very different vision. The whole overarching narrative from today is a very different vision of the election. This is a very different vision where it's not pointless, or you can make really strong claims about the need for government to be involved in people's lives and how that the candidate can message that in order to win. And I think it's an interesting one. I don't agree, obviously, because I've tried to break down some of the points, but it is a different perspective. Well, there's one more perspective that comes from the Daily Caller, and the Daily Caller article is actually more about Charlemagne the God. The headline reads, he's speaking to issues. Charlemagne says Musk interview shows why Trump resonates with so many people. And this is, once again, I think a great example of why the first author may be a little bit, I don't want to say wrong, but maybe a little bit wrong, okay? Because Trump does resonate with people. And Kamala, whether you like it or not, she is at least having some resonancy with the people as well. Whether that's because she's not Joe Biden or because people genuinely love her, it's still as of yet unknown. People want to ascribe it to many different things. I don't think that we're going to be able to parse that data right now, but maybe there are a few polls out there. I'll do a little bit of research. I'll come back with some information about it. But the point is, the people that are on the tickets are resonating to some degree, no matter how much they're flailing on either side. So let's hear what Charlemagne the God has to say. Quote, radio host Charlemagne the God said on Tuesday that former President Donald Trump's interview with billionaire Elon Musk demonstrates why many Americans appreciate his message. Trump and Musk discussed a wide range of topics on Monday for over 2 hours, including economy, illegal immigration. Charlemagne on the Breakfast Club said, quote, these are topics that Americans care about. And Donald Trump talking about them is the reason he resonates with so many people, end quote. And obviously his co-host kind of pushes back a little bit, like, well, no, the people that are voting for Trump care about him. And then Charlemagne basically come back and said, no. It's not just them. People care about these issues overall. This is also a very different view of the election. And you're thinking to yourself, Alex, well, it kind of sounds like the last one, which is there are specific issues that people can talk to, or the candidates can talk to, that people care about, which is both very, very true. There's no doubt about that. But my overarching point is that they are different views in that different things resonate with different people. And this election will be a referendum on various issues. If it is a referendum on immigration, Donald Trump will win. If it is a referendum on abortion, Kamala Harris will win. If it is a referendum on the economy, I would say that right now, Trump has a really good chance of winning, though Kamala, with some of her policies, is trying to make an argument for it. But this is a very different point of view, which is both of the last two articles are very different from the first one in that they are saying people do care, they are listening, and that these political messages are going to work. Whereas the first article says, I don't necessarily know about that one, Chief. I don't think anybody cares. And then when we look at the different views within the last two, they're talking about specific sides and what issues are resonating. So I think that covers all of the different articles from today. I think it covers three different perspectives quite well, even though that last article was a little bit short. If you want to go read it yourself or even watch the clip, there will be the link to in the description below, that like and subscribe button. But before you head on down there, let's get to our daily delight, where we are going to be talking about an article from Bored Panda. 27 new pics capturing each encounter with pets this UPS guy met while delivering parcels. And I'll be honest, this gentleman seems to be on top of the world when he is delivering some of these packages to his friends and picking up their dogs and posting it on Instagram. So if you want to see any of those adorable photos, they will also be down there into the description. So now you know what you're looking for as you go down there. It's below the like and subscribe button if you didn't know that. Sorry. I normally say that segment at the very beginning of the promotion of going into the description, but I kind of put it at the other one beforehand when we were talking about the links to all those articles. So it kind of threw off the mojo a little bit. But if you want to check out all of the articles that are down there, if you want to find the link to the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, it's also down there, as well as the Twitter handle at your DailyFlip, where I post a Twitter tirade every Tuesday and Thursday. And with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.